welcome everybody. Sorry, I've been away for a few weeks. I've had some technical issues with the main development workstation, so hopefully that's now resolved. Although I'm running low on memory, so it does need an upgrade. Quite a bit's been happening in the development over the last few weeks, and it's starting to take shape. And some of the elements that I wanted to get into the mainline project are now there. I'm going to do a bit of tidy up on one of the characters, which is the female Templar, because for whatever reason I screwed it up, and that particular model got corrupted in the project, and so I've got to redo the structure changes. Sorry, the structure changes around this one. I've re-imported it again from fresh, and this afternoon I applied the same. Just pin that. So the same RPG Builder components that are on the Templar Male have been applied to the Templar Female, so they've now got the same script components and so forth attached. The female one's got a couple of other ones because it comes with a capsule collider and a rigid body, which the other model doesn't have. And it's got the Physic Bones core script as well, which is one of the Quang Fan typical assets that come with the models. So I'll start off with this. I'm going to do a bit of work on the world map as well. After this, I just want to sort of get this process fixed up here, and basically just quickly model it off the male Templar. So basically in my structure now, I've got the 12 player characters as prefabs. There's actually 13 in there because I'm working on one that's using the horse riding to integrate that with a whole lot of other components. So that's a bit of a prototype one, but the others are all effectively pretty much ready to go. So it's really just this last one I want to get refixed and get that working the same way the other ones do, so they're consistent. So yeah, I'll do a bit of work on this, and then I'm going to move on to the world map UI and walk you through, I guess, what the Zarktor's Realm world map is going to look like for fast travel and those sorts of things. So you can. This is the RPG Builder demo scene that we're using as the starting point for the characters. So I've got a cat in there, which suggests that the character can have a pet, and obviously it will load whichever pet you've got into the scene with the character. That's my thinking at the moment. Anyway, so let's quickly take a look at this character. I just want to take the capsule collider off, or deactivate it for the moment, just so that I'm not getting what have I got here? Yeah, capsule collider, that's fine. What I want to do is get these structures in place. You probably would have seen a previous video of me where I'm actually working through this stuff, but hopefully I'm getting a lot quicker at it now. It shouldn't take too long. But I just really want to organize these items of armor into the correct folders so that RPG Builder can turn them on and off. So in the male one, for example, all these pieces are organized into slots, which RPG Builder can then say, well, take the helmet off. You can have a hood instead, and it will literally just deactivate that parent and all the child objects and reactivate a different one. So that's the sort of structure that I need to put in place for this character as well. And I've got the top level structure in place, so I just want to move things around basically and replicate the same structure here. So we've got an armature parent with an armature in it with a root. So I need to create that. There's the root, and I need to put that in its own parent underneath that called armature, and then another one called armature parent. I have to move this microphone because it's right in the middle of where I'm typing. I can't see the keyboard. Okay, so armature parent, armature root, and I've got the body mesh in the same folder because I need the meshes to be able to be taken out by the parenting structure. So the body parts are these body separate things. So these are the sort of underlying arms and legs and so forth that need to be deactivated when you're clothed. And obviously, if you take, the armor off the arm, then you need to be able to show the arm. And a lot of the time, you won't see this because, of course, if you've got the armor deactivated, you don't see the hand. And when the armor's on, you actually want to hide the hand because there's no point in rendering a layer that you're not going to see. And you can see the feet poking out the bottom there. So this thing here goes under meshes. So under here, I need to create. So I'm going to just rename this just meshes. And let's quickly take a look. So I like to put the foots, they would be called feet in most cases. Hands, let's put them into a parent so we can deactivate them together. We've got an upper body and a lower body, and then we've got chest, arms, head, base. Okay, so the head part is here as well, so move that up. Head base goes up there. We've got hair, so that actually goes under customization, so it meshes customization. So I do want the player to be able to actually change when they create the character, and maybe throughout the game. I don't know whether throughout the game you want to be able to customize it, but for the player to be able to customize the different hairstyles on the characters, because there's quite a lot of variation in here to actually change things, and certainly color of the hair and all those sort of things. More so on the females than the males, but equally, you can customize various things with the characters, and I think that sort of plays to how the role-playing fun comes from the game, in that you can create your character in a way that you actually want to play in the game. So I think that's going to work okay. Please let me know in the chat. I just want to check whether the audio is coming through, so let me know in the chat if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. So now we've got that structure in place. I can just start putting these pieces into the armor folder, because I know these are armor pieces. Now the hair for helmet is a bit special. Now I think that's probably going to go with the helmet, and G armor, chest armor, and then meshes. So that's a similar sort of top level structure. That actually needs to be in with this. Yep, that's all good. And the ground indicator, that we actually need that piece. So I'm going to duplicate that and put this one inside this character there and unpack it. Where are you, prefab? Oh, it's changed it not to prefab. It's got rid of it as prefab. Okay, that's fine. And we can get rid of that. Okay. And I'll put these down the bottom. Just make it a bit easier to see what I'm doing. It's better. All right. So we've got a similar structure. We've got the body mesh, which is this thing, and the armature, which is sitting in here, which is obviously controlling the whole of the character in terms of being able to move things around. Inverse kinematics are all here, and with the females in particular, the hair is actually typically attached to the head. You got the face root, and then we've got all these control points here as well. That's actually should be cheek, cheek, and cheek. And these items are going to be used with Salsa for the lip sync and for sort of controlling facial animations. And I know some of these characters have actually got in their folders, they've actually got lip sync ready pieces, animation pieces that I think have been wired up to do particular face. I need to look at that stuff and see if Salsa will actually work with it. Anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that too much at the moment. The armature is fine. The meshes, I'm just going to go through and make sure that these all make sense. So that's the underlying head. Let's just zoom in a bit here. Eyelashes are looking, I'm in isometric view here, which allows me to get quite a bit closer. I've already fixed up the eyes. When I say fix up, the eyes actually that come with the Quang Fan pack is actually really, really good. But what I've done is to use the Eye Advance pack that I use on the other characters, because it's just got quite a lot more capabilities in it to customize it. So, you know, we can easily allow the player to change eye color and things like that, which generally you're not going to see because you're in third person mode. But when you are in dialogue with NPCs in the game, then you're going to see the character talking with the NPC, and obviously that's when you start to see the face of the character that you've created. All right, so we've got that. Eyebrows, that's all fine. Teeth is fine. We've got the bikini bottoms, bikini top. So let's just put this sort of top to bottom. Bikini top, yeah. Feet, okay. So that looks okay. We've got the hair here. And in some of the models, the hair is actually it's embedded in the armature. In this particular model, it's not. That's okay. It's still wired into the mesh, and it's using, it actually has animation on cloth animation on the hair to make it move when the character moves, so that's all good. And there's this in and out part to it, which is sort of the outer layer of the hair, and then the inner layer, and then front and back. So the B is back. So they're all fine. And then this underneath all this is hair zero, which is like just an sort of scalp cover, so that you're not seeing through the hair to the scalp. Generally, you're looking at the layers of hair, and then underneath that is this scalp cap thing. So that's all good. So that's the customization part. And the bit that I do need to work on now is just to get the armor sets into the right slots that are going to work with RPG Builder, or how I'm going to configure it in RPG Builder, because of course it's up to me as to how I create the structures here. I think the characters, what was it, shortcut keys, Shift, Alt, Control, N, that's the one. So I'm just going to create these structures to put the stuff into. Not too worried about the fact they're nested. Chest, swaps, chest, add-ons, so the reason some of these are add-ons and some are swaps is that trying to talk and think and key in stuff at the same time. So this thing here, this bevel, protects the neck. That's actually an add-on because it's not replacing anything underneath, whereas the shirt needs to replace the whatever this is, the bikini top. So certain layers are going to be, certain of these objects are going to be swapping things in and out, and other things are going to be added on top. So that's why those slots are named that way, to make it easy to tell what the impact's going to be when I activate that object with RPG Builder. What does it need to do? It needs to swap out the layer that's underneath, or it needs to add on top, in which case it's not doing anything other than adding the layer. So waste, add-ons, and this structure is pretty arbitrary. It's just the fact that it works for me in terms of understanding how each of these characters is going to work when when these objects are put onto the character by RPG Builder. So they're going to be inventory items initially. Like this bevel would be an inventory item that you would equip, and when you equip it, it's going to put it into a known slot, and it's going to determine, based on the profile of what you put in RPG Builder, whether it's going to then turn off something under a layer underneath. All right, so I'm just going to now move all these structures out into armor to have the slots there. And then I'll move the armor pieces into them. And for the most part, I'm trying to keep the naming convention the same between the 12 player characters so that it makes it a lot easier to work with. I know some of them don't have some of these items. So some of, I think the mage or something doesn't have shoulder add-ons, shouldn't have shoulder armor. But there's no reason why I can't have an empty parent slot there for it. All right, so the helmet is very clearly a head slot. I'm going to put that at the top. Actually, let's reorganize them here. So back add-ons. I just want to have these in the right order to make it a bit easier to see what's going on. Neck add-ons. Did I not create that one? I don't think I created that one. Shoulder add-ons, chest swaps, chest add-ons, arm add-ons, hand swaps, hand add-ons. In the waist, legs, feet, and weapons. Okay. Okay. So some of these are actually parents with things underneath them. So I'm just going to basically put these into the rough folders of where they're going to go and work from there. The helmet is going to be part of that head slot thing. So that's an extra layer of hair. So obviously when you put the helmet on, you turn off the hair that would be there and you add in this hair for helmet, which is basically the hair coming out underneath the helmet, not through the helmet. So it's a little bit fiddly to sort of deconstruct the character, but once RPG Builder is wired up with these slots, and you can just equip a helmet and it will just work. It'll just turn off the right hair layer and it'll turn on this hair layer, and you wind up with hair coming out underneath the helmet, not through the helmet. So it's quite good, and you can tell very quickly if it's wrong because it just doesn't look right. Visually, it doesn't look right. Okay, so chest armor is going to be a chest swap because that's going to hide whatever layer is underneath, so that's fine. Arms armor is going to be, I would suggest, an add-on because it's it looks like they're rarer braces and shoulder pieces potentially, and elbow pads, but you're still seeing the arm underneath. So I think that's an add-on rather than a swap. Chest up, that's actually the bevel, so that's going to go on chest add-ons, I think. Pant Armor. All right, so that is a number of things. There are pants. Those are going to go into leg swaps, so it's going to swap the legs out. So the legs are there at the moment, but it will swap the legs out when the pants go on. Pant Armor. These are waist add-ons, which are actually called, oh Christ, I don't even know what they're called, waist add-ons. Folds. So let's call it the same as the other one, the same as the male character's version. and it's just got full folds. And bottom body A, that's actually a skin layer. I'm going to put that in the meshes for the moment and worry about that a bit later. Pant Armor belt. So that's actually part of the folds. So these two go together so the folds actually have the straps to the legs. So what I'm going to do is put them in their own parent called full folds with straps. And that's obviously the full folds straps. Because if you have that, you're thinking, how the hell is it attached to the person? But it's obviously got the straps there. You can't see it very well because of this thing. There you go. But you can see the straps there now. So chainmail is an add-on over the top of the shirt. So that's a chest add-on. And that's good. That's good. That is a waist. That's a belt. Easy. That's a nice easy one there. The shirt is that's a swap, I would say. A chest swap. Chest armor, I'm not sure about that. Looks like an empty parent now. I think that's got nothing in it, so that can go. That was one of the previous containers. Alright, so now what have we got? Sleeves, they look like their own piece, so they're going to be an arm swap, which I don't have, so I need a structure called arm swaps. Where are we? Arm swaps, there we go. Because we want to turn off the arms when we put that on. But leave the hands, so that's fine. And pants is fine. Top body, okay, so that's actually a neck section, and that's going to go into the meshes. So the main body parts are actually up here, and then the clothing parts are down here. The equipment sets are down here. All right, and what's this? G armor. That looks to me like boots and gloves. All right, so that's good. So they will go into hand swaps. Glove left, glove right, and just to make it easier, I'm going to put them into a parent called gloves. Actually, there, I'll use a similar name to the other one. Hand plate vambraces. Okay, so got a meaningful name, and I can turn off both at the same time. So you equip a pair of vambraces, that's what's going to happen. If for whatever reason they switch for a leather glove or something, or there's some item, then I can also activate one or the other. And they are plate boots, feet swaps, what are we calling them? Boots. Yeah, so on the male they're actually all separate pieces. All these different chunks can be separately enabled, but the female one doesn't have that, which is it's kind of okay. I'm going to be putting other armor pieces on as well. You can see there that this obviously needs to be a foot swap, so it swaps the feet out. So we would want RPG Builder to go up here and actually just do that, deactivate the feet when the boots are equipped. All right. Weapons, shirt armor is now, I think that is an empty. There's nothing in that, so I can get rid of that. And weapons, I'm going to leave that as a slot. The pant armor is no more. and the G armor is no more either. That's that. Get rid of that. Okay, so I think it's a similar structure now to the other one. And just so that you know, in RPG Builder, where you create the slot, it's just difficult to navigate. It's actually the one problem with RPG Builder is the navigation between the menus. It's a bit unclear sometimes where you are and how you get to where you want to be. Where is it? It is general gear sets. So this is how you create items that go into a set. So you're literally dragging in items and giving them names and profiles and all that sort of stuff. You can create recipes to actually craft this stuff. What skills you need in order to do it, and what materials you need, and what ranks you need. So it's quite advanced in terms of how you structure the items in the game. What I want is items. So under items here, I think these are the actual items, and these are so it would have a name, it would have an icon and a type, and this is where you tie it into the item type, which in most cases for these ones is going to be armor, but it could be a weapon. And the type, so it's got a defined type that might be equipable for certain player types, not others. So, a mage with plate is unlikely. And then you've got the slot, and this is this is the default set that come with RPG Builder. I'm going to be customizing this to map to these sets here, so they're a bit more granular, allows a lot more control. And then you obviously define for that particular type of item what its stats are, what it does, what abilities it has, whether it's socketed. You drag in the mesh or the prefab and what it looks like, and if there's some sort of requirement on it, and what happens when you equip it. Does it consume it, for example? And you can do all these sorts of things. It's quite powerful RPG Builder for this sort of stuff. So that's the items. Now the other part, I think it's in settings. No. Layers. No, I forget where it is. It's been a few weeks since I've done this stuff. General. Is it general? Classes, races. Templar. So I'm going to need to do some work with this Templar setup. Weapon templates. This is where you, okay. Stats, action abilities, starting items. This is where you can equip them. Equip which items are you going to be starting the game with, which is going to be fairly limited when they first start. So that's the races. The classes I'm not doing much with at the moment. Gear sets, where was it? Templates. I forget where it is. Anyway, I'll come back to it at some point. Now I've got to work through all these things in RPG Builder. The only thing I've found with RPG Builder that's a little bit annoying, apart from the navigation here, is, in my view, a bit clunky. It's hard to, there's no breadcrumb trail, so you don't really know where you are unless you're really, really familiar with the structure and you're using it all the time. The only other thing that's a bit annoying is the database that it saves it into is in a folder, and if you've got source control, you can't actually save stuff unless you manually go and check out the whole folder, where normally when you're editing something in Unity and you do something to it and edit it, it will automatically check it out of source control so that you can check it back in, whereas this thing just fails to save and you've got to manually get it. So I've got a folder that I've checked out under Blink here, tools, where is it? The resources folder, which is where the database is. I've got that checked out in its own checkout group so that I remember to recheck it out. Otherwise you You can create stuff, but you can't save it. It's a bit annoying, just in terms of source control management. All right, so that character's mostly okay. There's a few little things that... so these items should all be turned off. Upper body off. Head is fine. Bikini top. Don't need the hands. Don't need the lower body. The hair is fine. Although, actually, the hair should be turned off in this case with the hair for helmet turned on. There you go. So that's actually how it's supposed to look when the helmet is on. It's sort of coming through the bevel a little bit, but when the character's running around, it actually moves by itself, so it's kind of dependent on where it falls, really. Bottom body A, that's the waist section, and the neck. I don't know if you hide that, you don't really. Yeah, you do. Okay, so that probably needs to stay activated all the time, just to be sure. So that looks like that's all okay. I think I'm ready to make that back into a prefab. All right, so characters. Templar Female, and that's my old one. Oop, that was bad naming. Okay, and I'm going to drag this one down as a new one. Turn that on. Okay, turn that one off. This is just to help me flag which ones I'm actually working with. Alright, so that should work okay, and delete them from the scene now, because they're going to be spawned by RPG Builder anyway. So, what I want to do is save the scene, take it out of isometric, and where's the cat? There he is. So this is one of the pets in the game. There's dogs, there's cats, there's other things. There's quite a good cat character. He's got his own animation cycle. Get there. Quite a good cat animation. He's got his own animation cycles. Does all sorts of things. So I've left him in the scene here for the time being. All right. So RPG Builder. What I want to do is define that new prefab as the Templar Female version. So I want to see if this works. So I want to go to, I think it's races, Templar Visual, and you see it's using the old one. I now want to make that the new one, and that's all I think I need to do at the moment. I'm going to see if this works. I need to save that. I'll save the scene. There's the wolf, by the way. There's the dog wolf character. I just wanted to try have it in the scene, so it starts following the player around. Basically, with the Malbers controller, it can animate the animals. All right, so let's play the scene and just see if we can select that Templar female character now, whether it renders. New character, there he goes. So he's looking at his fur and everything. So that's working. Templar and female, and she's not coming out. There's a null reference somewhere. Inventory manager. Okay, so it's probably, yeah. I'll need to go back and fix up some stuff here because it's looking for the definition of the body renderer. So I think I've missed something in the setup of that that character, which doesn't surprise me because I was doing it in a bit of a rush. Paying a huge amount of attention to it. I suspect. Let's go around the front and isometric. All right, so I suspect it is something on one of these here. It's probably still wired up because I copied it from the male. I think it's probably still wired up to point at the male. So I just need to think about which one it is. Okay, controller essentials. That actually should be this character. The player appearance, I think, should be this one. Ground indicator should be this one. Is it going to allow me to do it? Yeah, that one. Mesh renderer target. Yeah, I need to see them. I need to compare these side by side in the scene again. Might as well try and get it working. Let's drag the prefab in again. Templar male. Templar female. At some point I want to copy the wings across to the male as well. Haven't done that yet, but let's get it working first. Alright, so we want to grab this guy and pin his settings, and grab her and pin her settings so I can compare them side by side. Alright, so he hasn't got the rigid body, which is odd. Why that's not there, I don't know why that's not there. Seems strange not to have it, but anyway. That's just a layer, that's fine. That's how I've got those set up now. Hasn't got that. There's no stats nodes, there's no effect nodes at the moment, so that's all good. So the combat node is sorted. Node sockets I need to do. So node sockets on this character, it needs the transforms of the left and right hand in order to activate weapons into the hands of the player. So weapon right is this transform of this one, so I need to do the same thing with the other one. So I'll need to go into the armature parent and find the right hand. I could use the IK one, but I'm actually going to use exactly the same as the other one. Clavicle right, upper, lower hand. Okay, so that's the weapon hand. Actually, is it a weapon hand? Yeah, it's actually a weapon transform. So let's do that. And then the left clavicle hand, weapon left, and then spine 3 is, I think, in the middle of the chest. So basically when they get hit by a projectile, it's going to spawn some animation or whatever at that point in the middle of the body. So this needs to be spine 3 of this one. Okay, so that's the sockets set up for nodes. Player appearance handler is important. Body mesh armature, that's that top level armature one. So I need to get that in there. So that's why it's useful to have the same name for these. That's the armor. That's the armor parent, and I need the armor parent of this one, so it knows what all the armor pieces are going to be. I haven't created them in here yet. The individual, so RPG Builder doesn't know about the armor pieces yet, which is okay. That needs an armature parent coming off there, so that's the armature parent off that one. And then we need all these transforms, so weapon right, weapon left, and so forth. So weapon right, and then weapon right, weapon left. Go in the other ones. I need to test this stuff out just when you're in combat and when you're in rest, whether the hands go into the right places and whether it activates. Okay, so I think that's right. And then these slots are pretty much okay. These are the ones that are defined by RPG Builder, but what I need to do is map them to the body renderer locations. So let's just collapse that guy up so I can see where it's going to. Hair base. Okay, so it's in the customization hair base. So the helmet is going to go to meshes, customization, it's going to be that one. Hair, 0, I think, is the equivalent of it. Hairstyles. This is the helmet that turns off the helmet. Turns off the hair. So this is going to be. That's going to be, I think, the body mesh renderer for this one. And I probably need to create multiple ones of these. You can, like with the slots, you can actually have it be aware of multiple slots here. So when you equip something for pants, it will then deactivate multiple pieces here. So I think for the hair, I'm going to probably need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots. So when you put the helmet on, it deactivates the 6 layers of these mesh renderers, because you can't do it directly on the parent, which is a bit of a shame. Anyway, chest. So that's going to be. I'm just going to get past the bug that was here, where it was a null reference. It was obviously trying to do something with these nulls, and it was failing. So this is the upper body, which I've currently got turned off. Upper body, chest. Okay, the pants are going to be lower body, and bikini bottoms there. And the gloves will be the hands. So we've got 2 gloves left and right, and so it needs to be able to turn them off. So hands are going to be there. And again, I can create, they don't have to be called gloves, they could be glove right, glove left. It's just the way RPG Builder currently has it. And then the feet, which are a pair. Okay, so they're at least not null. And you can tell it here that you want to hide the body parts when you equip armor in these slots, so that's all fine. So that's the player appearance handler done. The animator is okay, I think, because that's now pointing at the Ghost Lady S2 third-person controller. This will actually become a very different animation controller. I've got a product called Animancer that's probably going to be doing the animation for this stuff, but anyway, that'll come in time. Next one is the player animation hand. That's just a script. The character controller, third-person controller. Yeah, probably need to look at this. Where are you? That one. Okay, fold that up. So that's the script. That's the main top layer controller. And that's the player controller from RPG Builder, which is using the same one for both characters. So that's fine. Character animator is a script, and then these are scripts. Yep, cool. So they are now, I think, set up pretty similar. This one's obviously got a capsule collider and the Physic Bones script for animating some things on the female that you don't have with the male. And it's got a rigid body. I don't know why that one has still got a rigid body and this one doesn't, but let's just leave that as it is. I'm now going to apply those overrides to the prefab. Take them out of the scene and see if we can play it now and get them to at least show the character. And go from there. Let's go back to the cat. I like having the cat there. All right, play scene. See what happens. And she's fallen through the world. But it is rendering her now, and it's not generating an error, so that's good. That's not so good. That's good. I think it's to do with the layers that she's actually on. So let's have a quick look at, let's bring those 2 characters back in. It'll be the colliders with the world, or the layers that it's saying, you know, what's the ground layer for this character. Templar Female, Templar Male. Okay, lock him, lock her. Okay, so the rigid body is using gravity. This one doesn't have that. So I'm going to remove the rigid body. I don't need it on the character at the moment. I need... Right, so you can see the Templar Male has player and player as the tag, which is used to identify the player in a scene, and the layer, which is used by a whole lot of things to actually identify what's happening with this. I'm going to just do it to that object because I think it's only applied at the top level. I think that may be all that it needs. I don't think I need the capsule collider at all because of the other things that are in this script already do all this stuff. Remove that. I can always add another capsule collider if I need. Just any other custom thing on this one is the Physic Bones. So let's apply that. It should start to look very similar to the other one. Yep, so that's the only additional thing now. And the transform position, I'm going to just reset that so that they're at 0, just so that it's not going to cause any issues. Oh God, where are you? There. All right. So that's all good, and I can now delete and redo again. Trial and error. Save the scene. Play. If I can just get past this point where the player doesn't disappear, I can move on to something else. Right, so there she is. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. He's got some weird. I think in the RPG builder, when you click the characters, it's obviously switching out the prefab and choosing a different prefab to spawn in the scene at this character location spot. You can see it's there. It's a clone that it's created on the fly. But I think it brings it in from, I don't know, but you can see as it brings it in, there's a bit of movement of the cloth animation. And that cloth animation looks okay on her. On him, it's getting stuck, which I think is just some parameter on the cloth that's not quite right. But I think on the other, yeah, you can see it happening here. And I've seen the same sort of thing with some of these characters when they first come in. Is the female knight? Yeah, this female mage. So it looks like the character's been thrown in with some other transform and it's jumped to this position and the cloth animation's just gone crazy. And it can get stuck, which is a bit odd, but it kind of okay. I don't think a player's going to sit there doing this. Oh, well, maybe they will. I did. Anyway, so when you switch them in, they should be... so yeah, I'm going to have to fix whatever's going on with the cloth on his tabard thing. Anyway, they're doing their idle the idle animation. That's fine. That looks okay. Actually, let me try one thing. If I do... Okay, so it can't... Yeah, okay, so there's references. That's not going to work. I don't think it's going to allow me to go into a scene. Stat points need to be spent. I'm thinking this... Okay, it's going to take me into the extra scene. This is not going to work too well. Because I've got other stuff going on at the moment with that scene. So, yeah, that's not going to work very well. All right, but I'm good with the prefabs. I think that's where I wanted to get to tonight, was to get that character visible again and sort out the corruption issues that I had with it. So the 12 characters are now ready to go. I've also been working on preparing the animals, which are the wild animals and the pets and the mounts and the enemies and a number of non-player characters as well. So they're starting to come together, and I'm starting to add components to them to make them work fully. All right, so that's all good. Let's just quickly take you into the extra scene, which is now called Iscadum Nonorium. Dumnoniorum, I think it is. I keep getting that wrong. Which is the Roman name for Exeter at the time. And it probably would have been called Isker right the way through until the Anglo-Saxon time. So, all right. So this scene still hasn't been chopped up. It's one big scene, and it's a bit heavy. And there's still a few issues to work through with the... it's doing some sort of culling on objects in the distance, which it shouldn't be at this point. So it hasn't fundamentally changed from when I did the stream a few weeks ago. I've still got the the blacksmith in there, and he still does his... I've got him muted, I think. I've got him muted.
You require my assistance?
So he's got his lip sync going on him, and there's a... where are you? Here's the merchant, and the merchant is also, hopefully, he's got...
You have been weighed, you have been measured, and you have been found wanting.
Yeah, so he's got his lip sync going as well. Very basic lip sync at the moment. And there's probably some bugs to fix with things like the eyes moving in the right place. But anyway, he's in the scene to start. And I think, have I got... Yeah, so I've got another NPC here, which is one of the people who's going to give clues. So she's in the scene. I think she's got the visemes and animation going as well.
Right between the eyes.
Yeah, so the mouth isn't moving great at the moment.
Right between the eyes.
But there is something happening, so it just needs a bit of tweaking. But anyway, so Salsa's in there. And it's just a question of tweaking it with the character to make it work better, I think. Right. I've turned off the inns that were in the scene because they're very, very heavy, and I think a lot of the items that are inside the rooms are rendering even if you're looking at it from the outside. So I've turned it off at the moment. I've got various things going on in this scene at the moment in development that I want to fix up. So I've got Malbers horse riding happening over here with one of the night prefabs, and I've got a horse, another horse, and a first-person player. A whole lot of stuff happening in this scene that I'm trying to work through the best way to sort of integrate them and get them working smoothly. So that's work in progress at the moment. And I've made a bit of an architectural decision to look at the first person part of the game, and this is using Universal Character Controller from Opsive. So I was looking at Invector and getting Invector to work with Malbers horse riding, which works fine, but Invector doesn't lay the switch to first person view where Opsive does. So this is obviously the template character from Opsive, and it's got the capability to basically switch to this piece, which is just the arms that then go into first person mode and render with the camera, and the player can switch between or zoom in and out of first person to third person mode. And it's also got a VR component that is very similar to the first person mode, where you can see the arms in the view, but you're obviously using the VR controls. So it works with, let me have a look. I'll bring this up quickly. So, Opsive VR, I think it is. Okay. Let's look for publisher, Opsive. So this is the one that I'm now, I think, going to implement, or I'm in the process of implementing in the game as the main character controller. So at the moment I'm using a combination of the Blink RPG Builder character controller, which is very temporary. I'm using the Malbers Horse Riding character controller, which some of that will be retained. And I'm thinking about using this one, the Universal Character Controller, because it can switch between third person and first person. And you can add in the VR layer as well, which is another pack here. VR, the VR add-in here. So I like the fact that these components are you can add them into the environment, and as long as you wire them up correctly, these sort of capabilities come from it. And obviously, I need to switch out the model with the characters that I've got. What I'm finding though is Opsive's very, very powerful and just takes a lot of getting your head around. And of course, it's got a lot of its own integrations with Malbers and with other things like the dialogue system from Pixel Crushers and things like that I need to wire up. So I'm learning this Opsive character controller at the moment. It includes these two. So this ultimate one, I initially bought this one, the ultimate FPS one, but I've upgraded to this now, which has the first person controller and the third person controller in it. And then these ones will be added on, so climbing and swimming, an agility pack, those sort of things will be added to it to effectively, I think, replace what I was doing with the Invector third person controller. So Invector, this one, the third person shooter, that's the one I was working with. But it doesn't really have a capability to switch to first person without massive amounts of coding effort, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. So this is still in the picture at the moment, but it could disappear from my architecture in favor of the Opsive one. Anyway, so that's where that's the Opsive character with the, and you can kind of see it's called Nolan. And there's first person objects, which are obviously the arms down there, which attach to the camera. So when you zoom into the first person mode, it hides the head and the arms of this one, and it actually shows this one with different layers. So it's actually got camera layers that make the head transparent so that you can move in first person mode. Quite interesting how it all works, but you've got to wire up these pieces to your characters, and you've got to cut your mesh apart to actually have the character here. And I need to work through how that's going to work with Blink RPG Builder, because if I'm equipping armor pieces on the arms or gloves on the hands, I may need to spawn them on two different places, the third person and the first person arms. Obviously with the feet and things there's not a problem, but with the arms you've got two things to worry about. But that, if you do it right, that actually gives you out of the box a first person and third person playable character. And if that works with one character, I can apply it to the other 11. So they've got 12 that are like that. The Nolan horse is actually the Malbers horse with it's wired to recognize the Opsive character controller to be able to mount the horse. So I've actually got this working. So this guy will mount the horse and ride it around. He can't fire the weapons yet because I haven't wired it up with the weapons and the aim manager and the weapons manager, wherever it is, yet. And one of the things I'm working on fixing is the camera follows this guy in first person mode fine. When he's mounting the horse, you're holding the reins, you're riding around in first person fine. But if you move into third person and you're following him while he's horse riding, the camera is jumping up and down all over the place because it's tied to whatever he's doing. and it makes you quite sick when you're watching it. So I've got to fix the camera, the follow cam on this guy, and try and use the Malbers camera, which is a Cinemachine brain thing. So, but I've got to wire this up to use this guy's layers to hide the first and third person thing. So this has got its own camera thing going on in order to render first person and third person, but I need to wire that into the Malbers cameras. And I think the Malbers cameras are going to become the main player camera in the game, apart from when you're doing cutscenes and things like that, cinematics. So I want to leave, so it's kind of got multiple pieces of the pie on the table at the moment, trying to work out how to integrate these so that they work nicely. You're certainly horse riding okay. Even in third person, it's okay, but the camera just jumps all over the shop, and it just makes it quite difficult to play for a length of time. But it does work in the environment. I've got that playing, which is why he's in this extra scene, because I want to sort of explore the scene with that character. But I've got a number of other things going on here. So this scene is a bit heavy right now. But it's a work in progress to basically sort out some core character mechanics. Right, so I think that's probably all I want to do with that scene. Not too worried about these errors at the moment. What I want to do is I want to move on to some UI aspects, because we've been doing a lot of work with the rest of the team, and we're getting a lot of the art assets now commissioned to build the bosses and the boss levels and the world map and some of the cutscene animation, narration artwork. That's in progress now. But what I want to do is actually start building up the world map, because there's quite a lot of locations in the game that are starting to become a thing, and I want to be able to have a way that the player can choose to when they have found a location, that it be visible on the world map, and then they can fast travel to that location, a bit like how it works in Skyrim. So the product that I'm using as a template for this, you've still got to build your own map, but the template for it, I think it's called Fantasy Map. This one, Fantasy Map Creator, which I found the other day, and by Ponetti, who do some great artwork assets. This has 100 or so Photoshop image files, and which you can layer in Photoshop to create a world map that looks like this, a 2D interface, which I quite like. I quite like the sort of Skyrim looking maps. And let me zoom that up a bit. It's quite good quality, and these are layers in Photoshop, so they can be drawn without affecting the background map. You can overlay things on top, and that's fine for creating a 2D map where everything's visible, and you can obviously present that to the player, and the player can click castle there, and you fast travel to it, or you show a little character moving along the path or whatever. The problem I've got is that you discover the locations in the game bit by bit. So you actually don't want to display all of this in one go. You actually need Unity to be controlling the layers and controlling which locations, which areas are visible, which tracks are visible, and you sort of got this fog of war thing going on, so that you're not seeing the whole world necessarily initially. And so I need not only Photoshop to be controlling layers in terms of drawing it, but in terms of Unity being able to turn on and off castle, for example, and the label castle and the red dot have that hidden initially, and when you discover it by moving close here, then it's visible on your map permanently, and then you can fast travel to it. So Fantasy Map Creator does the Photoshop part of it. It doesn't do the Unity part of it. The only thing they've done in Unity with this is to import them and to convert them into sprites so that they can be dropped into a 2D scene. But you still have to wire it up to some code to actually turn on and off these things. So that's what I wanted to work on tonight, was to prototype the world map a bit and start putting in place the 2D objects for some of the game locations. And it's not a final. It'll be a temporary thing, just to sort of prototype what it looks like. That map that was shown here is fine for a widescreen TV or a widescreen monitor because it's horizontal landscape. But the UK is vertical, and it's set in the UK, and I've got locations in the game that are in Scotland, and I've got locations in the game that are in Cornwall, at the other end of the country. If there is an end to an L-shaped country. So I'm going to need the map to be vertical, and I think what that's going to mean is that the player can scroll up the map and show the top half of the page or the bottom half of the page in order to see the whole world of the UK. And that is the world boundary in the game at the moment. So I want to prototype what that looks like and get into writing some code to actually turn on and off the object layers when they've been discovered. But first of all, I need Unity to have these individual UI elements as things that can be turned on and off, a little bit like RPG Builder, that you can just activate and deactivate objects based on whether you've discovered them or not. But the underlying map behind is going to be pretty static. And Aidan, who's my artist on the project, is actually going to be drawing the world map and doing a lot of the placement, but he's going to need what I'm going to do in Unity in order to be able to turn on and off these elements. So that whilst he can do it in Photoshop, Unity's got to be turning on and off these elements in the game. So it's going to need something in addition to the Fantasy Map Creator to be created. So that's what I want to work on now. So let me grab the new scene that I just created this afternoon. I think I took this Fantasy Map Creator, which is the one that comes out of the product. And I've added in some stuff. So if I turn off these other elements and zoom into this guy, this is the one that comes out of the box. And let me put it in 2D mode so it's a lot easier to work with. And I don't need these other panels here so much. A bit bigger. There we go. So you can see that that is a 2D plane. It is it's just an image. It's a Photoshop ping file that's been imported into Unity and then converted into a sprite in order for it to be able to render it on the screen. The problem I've got with that is these areas are hard-coded. So whilst I might be able to edit the Photoshop file and edit the layers to change this from Alex's farm to something else, I can't turn off Alex's farm in Unity, and I need to be able to do that. So that's my sort of base layer, and I'm looking at some alternative template types to start with. And one of these that I quite like the look of, this is actually a map that was drawn of the UK in 1300s. It's a facsimility of a map. The actual map is a lot dirtier than this. This one's been transcribed. And it's actually rotated. So it's this is horizontal. It looks a bit rude the way that the UK is drawn. But it is it can be rotated in the view. I think if I do 2D and I do this, I go, I think minus 90, there you go. So that's how the UK would look on the screen. So down here you've got Cornwall. There's Tintagel, which is one of the locations in the game with King Arthur. So Tintagel Island. It's not actually labelled here, which is interesting. You've got Exeter, which is Isca Dumnoniorum, which is sitting here. You've got Dartmoor, so this is the West Country, Cornwall and Devon. London is over here. If you're familiar with the UK, London's over here. Wales is one of the locations in the game. There's lots of things going on in Wales, and then you've got Scotland up here with lots of stuff happening in Scotland too. So I quite like the fact that this is a genuine map that's been drawn. Let's rotate that around so we can read some of the stuff. The way that the buildings are drawn is very symbolic of how they were drawn in the Middle Ages. A lot of the time is they literally would draw a picture of a 2D picture of a building, and however complicated they made the building was how big the city or town was. So some of them like a little tiny house, and others are got churches and whatever going on. The writing is very hard to read, so they've obviously done a translation here to try and. Some of them are not. Here you go, Aberdeen. Some of them are able to be figured out. Some are a little bit harder to understand. Dundee looks like a lake of some sort. I'm assuming what is over here is Ireland. Well, this is Ireland over here. And underneath here would be the Channel, and over here would be France. So you're looking at it side on, looking west is at the top here. East is at the top. But yeah, so it's got locations on it. So I quite like, I'm not going to use this as it is, but I'm using it to sort of inform how the art style might affect the game. In that we're drawing a medieval map in the game that Gildas, who's the monk who writes about King Arthur, he's actually a non-player character in the game, and a lot of what is narrated and a lot of what happens is tied in with him. So I'm assuming that he would be the one that's actually going to draw the map for you. There's London there. It's obviously the biggest, chunkiest piece. So yeah, I quite like that. You've got off here, you've got Scandinavia, so Norway. There's Norway up there. That would be Sweden and Finland off there. So yeah, so that's quite neat. I like that one. Then you've got this one, which is for my benefit, just a reference for what was happening. This is basically pretty much exactly the time period when Zarktor's realm is set, and it's based on documented evidence at the time, and these are the peoples that were there at the time. So you've got the kingdoms of Dumnonia, Isca Dumnoniorum is Exeter, which is in here somewhere. You've got Tintagel down here. You've got places in Wales that will be used, and places in Scotland, and a few other peppered around that in Somerset and so forth that are locations in the game. So yeah, these are the peoples that were around. You had the Saxons invading around this time, and King Arthur's battle of Badon is actually against the Saxons, so they were trying to invade west, and the Dumnoni people were the people that were basically trying to defend from the sort of Celtic, I guess, would probably be the way that you would typically think of them. Like you had the Picts up in Scotland. You had these Britons who would be defending the homeland. You've got the Saxons coming in, and then you've got the Angles, which were sort of Danish invasion. And this is all before the Vikings come in. So the Vikings are at 800 AD. This is 500 AD. Yeah, so you've got Picts. There's the blue ones up there. You've got the Britons, which are largely the Dumnoni peoples, but also the Welsh, the Celts, that sort of stuff. You've got Irish groups coming in here to Scotland. You've got the Jutes coming in from... So the Jutes, the Angles, are basically coming from Denmark. The Saxons are coming from, I believe, northern Germany, and the Vikings in 800 come in and start attacking from the east, and the Normans come in obviously in 1066, and you wind up with Norman invasion by William the Conqueror, and then you get all the sort of French influence coming in. So it's basically, Britain's just basically a war zone throughout this whole period. It's just constantly being fought over. So anyway, it's an interesting diagram, and the game takes place a lot in the West Country. That's where I'm from. It's just what I know, and I find it interesting. It's got interesting things going on. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of Iron Age forts and things in Dartmoor. Exeter is a Roman fort for the Second Augustan Legion. Back in, I think that when the Romans left in whatever it was, 2 to 400 AD, they'd left and moved to Isca Caerleon, which is in South Wales, and set up their base here, but they basically abandoned Isca Dumnonorium, and then it got used by townsfolk as, a defensive area with a wall around it. So that's why I'm using it in the game. Also, from what I've read, it was basically a time when there were lots of warlords. As you can see, it's a mess. It's like the Middle East. It's a mess of groups, each with their own power, power wars going on in their own little areas. But it's hard to find who was the king of this area at the time, because they're all kings of different pieces. Mercia's up here, so king of Saxonia and all these sorts of things that are happening. But from what I've read, the king of England around this time, 540 AD, was actually also king of Dumnonia, and probably would have been based or located at Isca Dumnonorium, which is Exeter. So that's what I'm using in the game. I've got the king Gadway, I think he's called, around this time. So he's not a king of Britain, but he's a king of whatever the Britain's people were at the time, the black area here. So he's in the game. He gives you quests to solve, and so yeah, it's quite an interesting period in history. Lots of things happening in this decade from 530 to 540 or so, and that's pretty much where the game is set, is in that period of time. I won't want to spoil it too much, but there's a lot of things happening in this world, the world of England at this point in time in history. What I'm going to be doing, enough rattling on, is actually using this one, which is just an outline of the UK, just so I get the placement of these places approximately right. This layer will get replaced out with something that Aidan is going to be drawing, which will look a little bit more hand-drawn like this, or possibly in this sort of style, with a border. So obviously there's a map edge with ocean. I think one of the samples in here. Map. Yeah, so you've got some ocean areas here that can be dropped in, with sort of rivers and basins and those sort of things. So that style of artwork for the map is what I'm looking for. This isn't it. This is the one that comes with the template. So this is just for ideas. Right, so yeah, let's turn that off. I'm going to start building some stuff here. What I want to do actually is to start to plug in the locations of some key places. So I've got the pins in the right places. And then I can start working on Unity, actually hiding and showing those on a base map, which I can then replace the layers behind this by just turning on and off, these layers. So what I actually want to do is I want to bring up Google Maps, and I want to start putting in some of these places. So Tintagel, location, about right. So all right, so there he is there, and I'm just going to put this off to the side so I can see it off screen, so I can refer to it. I've lost it. Where the bloody hell's it gone? There it is. Alright, so you've got this steep part here, and then it's down in here somewhere. Alright, again, this is a prototype, so I just want to see if I can get the structures going, and nope, I don't want to do that. I want to move that down. I want to put that it's kind of in there somewhere. And let's zoom in a bit. And there's some. So this pack actually has some quite neat, objects in here that I can use. Decor. Octopus. Let's put an octopus in there. Marks. I think that's what I want. Coloured flags. Flags. So there's flat versions, and then there's versions that, that's the normal version, and there's a flat version of it with more sort of very flat 2D art stuff. But I actually want some objects in here, so let's take a look. Castle. Yeah, I think it's more like what I want to do. So Tintagel can be there. What I want to do is to add in, if I can find it, the labels. So trees. Okay. Town. Okay. Whoop. Scale that down a bit, and that's going to be Visca. We want ruins. Just having a bit of a play here just to see if I can get something looking a bit interesting. Okay, we do definitely have caves in the game. And there's mountains in here that will be used. Mountains and trees. Okay, this sort of thing. I'm not too fussed with exactly where they're going at the moment. What they look, I know it's a bit square. I just want to have some rough idea of where these are going to go. The scale of the UI I've got to work through as well. How much the player can zoom in and out and so forth. All right. These a bit bigger. I'm not totally convinced with that castle. But anyway, waves. All right, so this is very neat. It's sort of the way they did oceans back in the day, so I quite like the way that that's looking. Again, Aiden's going to be looking at the drawing the world map for me. This bluish background one will be replaced, but we can use this element to make it look like waves. We want knolls, forests. Okay, there's quite a lot of shipwrecks around Devon and Cornwall. So I'm thinking that stuff might work. Is that not coming in? That's very odd. Some of these objects are not showing, which makes me wonder if they've actually been set up properly as sprites. None of them are working at the moment. Alright, so let's try switching the scene out again. So I'm getting some messages here about metadata that's missing for the artifacts. I think because I've been bringing in these images for the UK maps and things without the metadata that goes with them. That's okay. They do clear. I'm pretty sure they clear. Keeping a very close eye on my memory consumption, at about 70% used at the moment, which is way too high for this scene. So I think some stuff's probably cached in memory that shouldn't be there. Okay. All right. Let's try that again. So decor, old shield. Yeah. Okay. So they're coming in now. That's good. All right. Ships. Not sure these sorts of ships were around back in that day. Bridges. This really is just prototyping, just to get a sense of how this is going to look for the player. Trees, docks. Okay. Farms, right? Yeah, there are definitely farms all over the shop in the game, in the West Country. So yeah, I think some of these are going to be smaller than they are currently. Okay. I'm putting these roughly where I think they're going to go. They are locations in the game that I know about. I don't want to spoil too much about what they are. danger spot. Danger spot, I like that. Yeah, let's put one of them in. Pyramid, not so much. Obelisk, yes. Yes, we'll have some obelisks. And stones, definitely. Actually, the obelisk probably there somewhere. Stones. Mines, yes. So Cornwall is known for tin mines. It's probably why Tintagel's got the word tin in it, to say the truth, because it was kind of the capital of Cornwall during the Middle Ages period. We're missing Tintagel, so that needs to go back in. That looks good. That's kind of Tintagel-y, the bridgey thing going on. The church can move somewhere else. All right. I'm just bringing them into the scene just to get a sense of how much space I've got to work with, whether, because if I need to rescale the map, which I think I do, I want to get a sense of how zoomed up the individual objects are. But you can see here that I can turn off a lot of these, and as you discover these locations, they're going to pop onto the map and become clickable or selectable for navigating to. So that's why I'm sort of prototyping this. Some of these are going to be fixed in the background, so I would imagine the mountains and that sort of stuff's just going to be part of the background layer. In fact, what I should probably do is restructure this a little bit now, just to help me organize, because this is just a prototype. So, all right, let's create a couple of parents and things here. Okay, so let's go background map layer. Mountains, cities, points of interest, rivers, what else are we going to have? Caves. Okay, and we should be able to just move these into here, turn them off, and they just disappear. Caves, that's obelisk, that can be a point of interest. Tower house, okay, that's a city and a town. That's actually going to be Tintagel. Mine, caves and mines. Danger spot. Let's put that in port. There. Castle. Which castle is that? I think that's one in Scotland. So let's make that a city and town. I'm not going to give these names just yet because I don't want to give away too much in the game. High ground is going to be just put that in mountains area for the time being. Gates, it's going to be a point of interest. Paling is point of interest. Church, towns. Alright, so we need a couple of layers here. It's going to be decoration. Okay. It's the mountains. Mountains in there. That's going to go there. Okay. And I'm going to put this stuff into another folder called unused, which is all those other templates and stuff. Okay, so decoration compass. We've got the monster in the ocean, so I'll put that there. Farm, that's going to be a... So the cities and towns are probably going to be the main location, clickable, navigatable areas. A lot of the points of interest may not be, they may just be places that you can pass through, but you're not necessarily going to navigate to them. What's that? It's a decoration. Mountains. That is mountains. It's actually a dead object. There's nothing in it. What's going on with that one? Delete that one. Caves. Will be the caves and the mines are navigatable. Town. That's Iska. Because that's kind of one of the starting areas is Iska. So we should be able to literally, from the start of the game, have the starting city visible on the map, and then as you discover other places, they're going to pop up and be controllable through Unity, turning on and off these locations. So I think that'll work well, and then the imagery can be switched out, and the locations can be moved in Unity just by dragging to actually position them where they need to go on the map. So that's fine. Castle. That one's dead as well. Don't know why that one didn't work. Octopus. That is decoration. Cool. Alright, so the decoration in the base map. Waves. That waves one's not working either, is it? Very odd. Okay. Cool. We can certainly turn on mountains as part of the base map, and the rivers. These locations will be discovered. These locations will be discovered systematically. Then the placements aren't quite right, but I'm prototyping, so I'm just figuring out how this is going to look and feel at the moment. But I think that's doable. But it's obviously not going to look quite like this. I think we're going for this sort of color scheme. So they give you some templates to work with. The backgrounds here are sort of plain paper, like that's quite neat, dirty paper, clean paper. So I think one of these will probably be the base color. But then Aidan is going to be drawing the actual landscape himself, so that will give me the border of the location. So if I show you actually what it looks like in Fantasy Map Editor, so this a Fantasy Map Creator. So this is obviously the Panetti template, but you can see how the coastline is drawn That's probably how Aiden's going to be doing the UK, with, you know, the River Thames on the right and whatever. And you can see how the mountain ranges can be edited to fade them out near the edges and all that sort of stuff. But it's these point of interests, these locations, that is what I'm trying to do with this stuff, to be able to turn on and off these locations. That's my critical thing I was trying to figure out how I was going to do, and I think that'll work. I need to write some code to basically turn on and off these, and allow the player to select them and navigate to them if that's the case, once they've discovered them. So, and a lot of the time these are going to be scenes. So the Isca Dumnonorium scene will load Isca. So clicking on that would, or selecting that on the world map, is going to take the player to that location, unless they ride over open ground to it. So I don't think the UK is going to be completely open world, but there will be open world areas that are quite extensive. So, you know, several square kilometres of area for a lot of these level parts. So I think if I look at the Gaia terrain on this one, take it out of 2D, take it out of isometric. So that's one terrain. I think I think the other ones are turned off in here at the moment. So when you add in these other terrain squares, it's quite a large area, and so that's about as open world as you want around Exeter. Once you get to a certain radius away from Exeter, then you're going to be basically navigating to that world map and then choosing where else you're going to go. So yeah, not completely open world in terms of, you know, it's not like Warcraft where you can walk everywhere and to everywhere, because it's going to take weeks to actually navigate by horseback to Scotland, and you need to be able to jump to Scotland and jump back to Cornwall, because that's where some of the story's going. Anyway, so that's basically how the world map's going to work, is to allow you to, once you've discovered these places, to jump between them. So I think that will work quite well. I quite like this pack from Panetti. The templates, they're quite good. He gives you the Photoshop files to actually work with the layers. The layers are predefined in here, and then you just drop in a little bit like I was doing in Unity. You drop in the stuff and edit it. But I'm going to give Aiden free rein to actually create what he wants to create, and then I'm going to just peel away the layers that need to be turned on and off into Unity, and have it work in that scene dynamically. So I suspect the base layer, the decoration, the mountains, all of that stuff is going to be drawn by Aiden, and then this stuff here is going to be the stuff that's activated and deactivated. I think that's how it's going to work. All right, cool. How many time? So I'm going to try and keep my schedule to about 2 hours when I'm streaming, because I get so knackered after doing about 7 hours of streaming. So I'm going to probably tie this up in a knot at the hour at 11 o'clock. And what else can I work on here? So a couple of the other things that I'm working on, just to pull in some user interface elements here, are these ones, which are templates for showing the player the controls that they are going to use in the game. So you allow the player to customize the controls, but they need to be able to refer to them out of the box, and obviously refer to them once they've customized them. So this pack is called, I forget what it's called. Controller something or other. Controller, there you go, knickknacks, controller overlays and button kits. So this is a set of, again, 2D artworks that have the little call outs so that you can actually show the player what controls are mapped to which buttons. So you still got to do your own screen to actually control all this stuff, but at least find a stuff canvas. There we go. So at least all these elements are there. I think the PS4 and the Xbox one's probably going to be the main one. Outline buttons and outline controller, I think it might be this one. So from an architecture point of view, I've got Rewired. Rewired is the product that's handling all of the inputs from the player, from Guava Man Enterprises. So this thing is pretty flexible. Like, you can pretty much integrate the inputs from anything you can think of. It's pretty broad. VR, flight joysticks, mobile devices. Not that necessarily Zarktor's ROM is going to be on mobile, but if it is, then it can be easily tied in with Rewired. Rewired's got integrations to Invector, Universal Character Controller, Malbers Horse Riding, you name it, it's got it in there. But whatever mappings Rewired has are going to need to be displayed on a user interface for the player to know what does X do. So yeah, this sort of thing here where the currently mapped control can be displayed next to these individual controls. I don't know if I used that one. There's a few different samples in here, outlined and reversed. Yep. So that's in the project. As I start to wire up Rewired to Malbers and Universal Character Controller, UCC, that's probably where I'll start putting those controls into this and having the user interface display what that mapping is, because at the moment I'm testing with the PS4 controller and the Xbox controller, gamepad controls, keyboard and mouse. And so this pack I bought specifically because it supports those controls. And of course, when it goes onto console, eventually, then the Nintendo Switch and whatever is going to be on there too. So that's quite a neat pack. Again, it's visuals. It's all Photoshop files basically in a 2D layer that you can then control what you want to do with it. So anyway, that's that one. The other UI elements that I am working through is the loading screens. And this essentially has the capability to be able to load between scenes and just keep the user entertained for a few seconds while the loading screens, while the scenes are being loaded. So presenting a bit of information, some tips, and a ticker so that you can see how far through the progress is. So this sort of thing. And you get a game logo, and that's probably a bad example. I think you've actually got to include these in the build in order to have them there. Let's replay that again, see if we can do standard. There we go. So you get your little progress indicator. You get these sort of dynamic panels that can display, and then by the time the scene loads, obviously you're allowing the user to enter the scene. So loading screen studio is going to be for transitioning between the heavy scenes if it needs to. And I'm working through a couple of packs from the same artist who did this one. One of them has been decommissioned. Frost. So one of the packs has been deprecated, which is a bit disappointing. Frost complete UI. But I quite like this. I quite like this pack, and considering its UI elements, I'm not overly fussed with the fact it's been deprecated. What's been deprecated is, I suspect, the support for the scripts that are behind it, and I may end up using a combination of Frost and Zone, the two packs from this Mishki. That's who creates these UI packs. And I do quite like the two packs here, the Frost UI and the Zone UI. They have a different feel for them, but I think I'm working through what's going to be a blend of these two. So let's take a look at the desktop version of Zone. I know there's a few errors, so I'll need to get past those. I haven't done anything with these yet, so they're literally out of the box. Okay, so you get a nice background, little animation over the top, sound effects obviously, and so I think if I've got the gamepad control, I'm not sure if it's going to let me do that. No, it's not wired up for the gamepad control. There is an issue with it should be cutting around this white box and actually hiding what's outside this white box. It's not doing it, and I suspect I need to re-import this. It could be a layer thing with the camera. There's obviously stuff going on with wherever the cursor is, but it's got all the sound effects, and it's got stuff in here for multiplayer, which won't be relevant for Zarktor's Realm, but I think the template works. I'm not sure about the sound effect, but the fact that it's all wide in there. Okay, this is what I'm talking about in terms of controls and having the controls mapped with the other control screen, where you can actually see the controller with all its mappings. But yeah, you've got the ability to be able to control the settings in the game as relevant as they are to whatever it needs to be. And I need to start wiring in some of this stuff because you can start controlling it within the game. So yeah, that's Zone UI, which is the product that's still supported. The other one, Frost, isn't, so that's been decommissioned or deprecated from the store, so you can't buy it anymore. But I may reuse some of the assets in this one. I will see how I go. So this is Frost. And what I quite liked about this was the view that it was, a lot of Zarktor's Realm is exploring, open world. I'm not sure the aspect ratio is quite good there. Don't like that. Okay. Yeah, it's neat. I like the animation that they have there. The sort of White Wilderness one there. Let's just do it's free aspect. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, so that's quite good. This is just the background. Obviously, it's just a video that plays in the background. It looks computer generated to me. It's not real. Yeah, it's computer generated. But yeah, it's quite nice. I could understand why potentially they've deprecated off the asset store if it's not supportable with whatever they've got going on here in this object. It's obviously some sort of video player with a video file, but I did quite like the feeling of it. So it's got a HUD as well, where you've got this sort of so it's more in-game sort of exploration. But I did like the concept of this being an animated screen behind the UI and using that as the backdrop for the zone UI one, if that makes sense. So I think all these components are now all the main UI pieces that I'm going to be using. I've got, in addition to this, I've got the Blink RPG Builder UI set, which is obviously all the screens for bringing up inventory and character profile and all those sort of skill trees and all that sort of stuff as a UI element. But I've got the world map happening with Fantasy Map. I've got obviously icons for spells and things are coming from this 4,000 Fantasy Icons pack. And yeah, a lot of these are now in the project, and I'm able to start wiring them up once they make sense to do so. Malbers Horse Riding has its own UI at the moment, and I want to be able to integrate the right pieces into the UI of the game. Actually, that shouldn't be there. That should be down there. It's a UI thing. Yeah, so that's kind of coming together. The characters are coming together. The player characters, the NPCs, I'm still accumulating a few more NPCs to actually go into the game. And I think once I've got the core of them and they are wired up with salsa lip sync, and then I've got some interaction to do with RPG Builder to actually interact through dialogue with the dialogue system, then that is going to allow me to start building out the dialogue in the game and the quest lines. And we're working on the quest lines in spreadsheets at the moment to actually tie that in. But I don't want to end up writing specific dialogue for the game until we get some things nailed down. There's still a few things floating around on deck that I want to nail down. This is busy. That's fine. Right, in the meantime, I should probably share. I don't want to share that because that's got all the clues for the game, and I don't want to show that because that's the main thing there. Okay, so yeah, okay. So this is the current technical design of Zarktor's Realm in terms of the components that talk to one another. And this has been something I've been working on for about a year to get the assets, test them out, see how they integrate with others, and put them in their place, get them to talk to one another, and get them to flow. So effectively, this is like a technical architecture or a software stack of all the pieces. The middle bit here is my main challenge at the moment is I've got this bit working, the Opsive Universal. I was using Invector. This is potentially going to go. This is going to allow me to do third person and first person control with the one controller. I've got it working with the horse riding. I need to integrate this with Blink so that Blink RPG Builder can equip stuff to this character. Equip this character controller, arms and the first person arms and the third person character that is this thing, which is the Quang Fan character. Rewire is obviously doing the inputs, which is why it's touching everything. It's sending input controls to all sorts of stuff going on. And there's your Frost and Zone UI. It's obviously sending inputs to there, allowing the player to toggle the menus on and off. There's your scene loader, loading screen studio. These are the levels. So there's, Iska is one of these levels, or Tintagel is one of these world levels. And the other sort of game mechanics going on here are the player can set fire to things, and they can also destroy things in the game. So you can kick down a door and it will shatter into pieces. And you can set fire to stuff. So if you are an archer and you fire some flaming arrows at something that can burn, then Ignis is the one that's going to burn it in the environment. Blink RPG Builder can call stuff in dialogue system, which is integrated with Quest Machine and Love Hate, which is your reputation. And this thing handles the deeds. So if you go and rescue people in one village, you might be a hero in the next village because they've heard about it, or you've murdered somebody, and now your reputation is shot in all the villages that are nearby that wherever it happened. So that's happening with that's sort of a nice to have. I might add some of these things later, time permitting. So I've got to control the scope of this project a little bit, and that's just my way of trying to put some boundaries on things that absolutely are core to the product and the things that are nice to have. The dialogue is already kicking off Salsa lip sync, but I probably will be using Fmod for audio stuff within the environment as well. That's tying into ambient sounds, which is a procedural worlds product for playing nature sounds largely in the world. And sector audio is part of this as well. So procedural world sector audio is chopping up the world scene. So if you move through a dungeon, you might get lighting and rendering of certain things in certain areas and sounds in certain areas and not in others. And so I think a combination of ambient sound and sector audio is what's going to be controlling the audio there. I've got this bit working. Salsa lip sync is driving the emoter and it's driving the eyes on the character. I have a product called Real Eye Movement that I think is doing basically the same as Salsa Eyes. I just want to check that that is even needed. It may not be needed anymore because I think this is doing what it needs to do. These are kind of, I'll look at that when I get to it. Animancer is likely to be the main product that controls all the different types of animations, and that's to get rid of the mechanim Unity animations, which is really, really complicated. I've got lots of anim sets to work with, and yeah, that's going to be driven through. It needs to be integrated with Opsive, Horse Animset Pro, Blink RPG, and obviously drive the animations that go on the character. I'm already using Eye Advanced, which is the pack that does the nice eyes on the character. These are the actual models, the meshes and the materials from mostly Quang Fan at the moment, but also some other NPC characters. And a lot of the NPCs will come out of this Infinity PBR Humans pack, which is very, very good for different blend shapes, different character profiles, different sets of armor, different clothing, all sorts of stuff. So this will be a lot of the NPCs will fall out of this one. The main camera rig is actually going to be, it's a combination of stuff. So this thing is, it's obviously going to have post-processing effects. I'm using that in the extra scene. It uses Cinemachine, and I'm going to be using Pegasus, which is a procedural worlds tool for cutscenes and fly-throughs and those sort of things. But the camera rig also has a lot to do with this Opsive Universal Character controller in terms of the follow cam, and in terms of toggling between first person and third person happens here. And when you mount the horse, then the Malbers Cinemachine brain thing covers it. So all this stuff is tied in very closely together. I can't illustrate it here on the diagram easily, but essentially the main camera rig needs to follow the character. There's the sector. That's what I was talking about. So this is handling region loading, world streaming of the world. It's culling stuff, and it's chopping up the terrain into performant smaller zones to be able to work with. In the world zone, I've got Enviro, which is doing pretty much all of the weather thing. So a lot of the weather systems that I had fall away because Enviro is doing the vast majority of it. I've got fog volume there as well, but this is pretty much controlling 99% of what's going on in the world in terms of weather. There's quite a few water packs that are integrated now. Crest is the open ocean and beaches part of the game. Swimming will largely use this KWS water, which I think is Crypto FX 289, I think is the supplier of that one. And the river auto material and lava volcano environment packs will largely be the rivers. So there's 3 different types of fluid visuals in the game for different scenes for a reason, because these products are probably best of breed for the different types of environments that you're interacting with. So that's the water stuff. And then the terrain is coming, and sort of the world is really coming from Gaia Gina and Veg Studio, which is their best of breed products for building out the world environment. And that's kind of it. Most of these products are and the Emerald AI. So probably a combination of Emerald AI and Opsive also have a product that does. Let me just do Opsive stuff. So their behavior trees do a similar thing, and they've got separate packs for different things here. But essentially, you build your AI for your non-player characters or your enemies. You build them into a tree, and you decide on rules how they're going to behave. And the structure of this can be a bit daunting, I think, to get used to. But effectively, you're creating these sections of this behavior tree to say, search and pursue. When you find something, then you're gonna attack, or you're gonna override that part with something else. So it's basically sort of sections of the tree get overridden with other sections of the tree as a high priority. I'm not totally convinced that I like the behavior designer thing. I think it could get really, really big in terms of a diagram of what's going on, but I think that's inevitable if they've got complex behavior. I'm not convinced that I like this editor experience. I'm playing with it at the moment to get familiar with it, but the other product that I'm looking at is the other product I have, Emerald AI. And so this one is a different way of doing it, I guess. And you're building out your rules in a different way. So I'm looking at the two. It'll be one or the other, I suspect, that I'll end up using. So Emerald AI or what's called Opsive Behavior Trees. It'll be one or the other of those, I suspect, for the enemy AI and the NPCs. What else is in the picture? So this PC gameplay test is a product that I'm very keen to get cracking with, because nope. Where are you? There it is, gameplay test recorder. So this thing records, it uses Rewired, and amongst other things. It records what the inputs are from the player and allows you to play them back. So effectively, you've got this record and playback system to be able to run tests. So I could record, a gamepad control through Rewired, play a level, save that as a test, and then play it back at some later time and validate whether the level has changed because I've been messing around with some prefab or something. I've broken it, so you can't now open the door in order to get to the level or whatever. So you can use it for testing. And I really like the idea that you're not having to write massive, complicated test scripts, but you're actually using the player's controls to see if you can actually get to what might be, the goal of the level. So a very practical way, a very quick way to actually get some tests scripted up to be able to, and the usability tests as well. Because if there's a problem with the level and you break it or you refactor the level, then you can just re-record playing through the level and play it back again. So I really love this product. It's done by something called a group called Two Guy Games. I think I've got a couple of products on the asset store. The Build Inspector is the other one. So I've got that, and I like the fact that it has compatibility with Rewired. It's got limited support for the Unity input system, which is interesting what limited might mean, but I'm okay because I'm going to be using Rewired for this, and that's going to be the main inputs that go into this thing and then record. So yeah, I'm very, very keen to, once the scene starts to get to the point where I want to use that, this thing is going to take input from Rewired and record and play it back to the character to make him walk through, the scene. And that's really going to help me with my regression testing, because as I build out stuff in the game and add dialogue and add quests, I need to make sure that the player can get there. And I think, testing the whole game could take hours, weeks, months. And I think if I can test or regression test particular quest lines and particular elements of the game in gameplay, I think that's going to save an awful lot of time. So I'm quite pleased with that product. So yeah, that's why I've got it as red as a high priority. Sector is there as a high priority because I want to chop up the scenes and actually get them a bit more performant so that I can work with that Exodus scene again. And Rewired, that's my next priority for the characters, is to actually start getting Rewired to handle the inputs between these pieces. And I need to deal with this conflict between Horse Animset Pro and Blink. It's just, I think what it is selecting the right components from this and this that will work together and fixing anything that's left that is a conflict. At the moment, if you put all of these components on a character, it doesn't like it because it's got multiple controllers trying to do the same thing, trying to take control of each other. So getting these now work together, getting this back into the picture on these player character controls is a trick. And I've found a video on Blink's website which shows how to use a custom controller. So basically, custom controller is going to be what's going on here, and I hope then that this would be sufficient for what it needs to do to put the character into a scene, to be able to interact with the world, to be able to equip items on the mesh or on the character. So it needs to be able to do this first person and third. So I actually need to highlight this. So it's, I'm just going to put first person or third person. So the first person is really the arms, and the third person is the whole character. But basically, Blink RPG Builder's got to spawn and hide elements of the mesh on both first person and third person objects and run compatibly with these other pieces. But if I can get that working, that's going to be absolutely awesome. But this Blink RPG Builder is doing an awful lot of other things as well. So this is kind of the core of the game, is this Blink, because it's handling all these things: inventory, weapons, location, stats, skills. All the database of the game is essentially in Blink, and the character is moving around in the world using all this stuff. So this is definitely the core of the game is in this box, which is why I'm focused on it wholeheartedly at the moment. I've got all this other stuff working nicely on the side. Some of this stuff, the grey stuff, I've got and I'll use when I find a need for it. So there's a leaning animation tool, dynamic bone, and final eye case. This is all kind of making the animation and movement look realistic and fixing up issues like when you're standing on sloping ground, but you're standing vertically, one leg is in the ground and the other one's hovering above the ground. That's where this sort of stuff should be able to fix that up. And final IK and that sort of stuff is going to be able to handle more realistic looking joints. So I'll use that when I find a need. There's a lot of other stuff in here. Obviously, all the 3D assets that go into the props, the nature assets, the buildings, they just fall into the game world. They're not. I'm not putting them on here because there's hundreds of them. And yeah, so that's kind of how it's starting to, the technical structure is starting to fall out of the work. And this is probably, I'd say, taken me 2 years or a year and a half probably to shape how this structure's falling out. And it's still in a state of flux with a few of these elements, but this is all prototyping this stuff in the background to see how it works, whether there's a touch point there, and validating that it's going to work, essentially. So it's getting there. Be chopping away at a few extra things here to make it smaller and simplify. There's more things on here than I need, but I'm pleased that I've now got Opsive working, because I did want to get the first person mode of play into the game. It's been third person at the moment until now. So, and this has the VR part, so I should add that there. VR is where that comes into play, where Invector would have been only third person. So that's why this is now. There's nothing wrong with the Invector product. It's just I want to try and broaden the different play styles to encompass these things as well. So if I can deal with the complexity that's going on in Opsive, it's a goer. If this gets too complicated to work with, then I may use Invector for the first release of Zarktor's Realm and transition to this over a period of time in order to roll out VR and first person. But my goal is to have the launch of Zarktor's Realm using Opsive, at least in first and third person. VR, we'll see, because that may require a whole lot of other testing. But the focus, obviously, the priority is third person first, then VR. Anyway, that's where I'm up to. That's should be interesting for any of you technical folks who are watching, who you might be familiar with some of these and might have been trying to get integration going with some of these yourself. In some of the cases here, I've actually got the dotted lines between these, or the lines between these are generally because there's already existing integrations that plug these things together. And in some cases, so these are all from the same company, and these have got interfaces between them. So there's actually, you get both products, and then there's a downloadable piece that joins these bits together, and with a bit of configuration, you can get it to work. And the same with Horse Animset Pro. Invector's got a piece that fits here. Some of them do not have integrations, and from Blink, this is I've read up on a lot of the forums that doesn't exist, and so I need to bridge that gap somehow, or at least make them not conflict. But the way I'm seeing it is that this thing can run with a custom character controller, which is what this is doing. So I just need to dislocate the bits that are in conflict here. And yeah, I think over the next couple of weeks, get Rewired plumbed in so that I've got one set of inputs to manage, whereas at the moment, Horse Animset Pro's got its own Malbers input thing happening, and Opsive's got its own input thing happening, which is, I think, the Unity input system, and Blink's obviously using its own, so they're all trying to pull the same inputs from different configurations. I want to push that all through Rewired soon, so that this is driving absolutely everything. And I think once that's wired in, is then I can actually start using that other UI thing. What was it called? Controller icons UI, which is the one that displays the gamepad with all the buttons on it. So I can actually start showing what is the configuration of the current player, through Rewired? How can they control these things through that? So I think that's it. I'm going to probably call it a night now. It's almost 11:30. So I've gone over what I thought I was going to be doing. And yeah, so that's where that's all at. The project is going really well. Quite a few things are going on in the background that the last couple of weeks while I've not been streaming, I haven't been sitting back and resting. It's been hectic and there's a lot of things going on. But I will continue to try and stream 3 times a week. They'll just be probably shorter stream lengths, like a couple of hours at a time. So I am back. Once my machine has a bit more grunt, then I'm going to be able to start streaming and playing the game at the same time, whereas at the moment it's a little bit heavy, and that's because I don't have the sectorization going on the world, and it's loading a massive scene without chopping it up. So I've got some more memory to go into this machine, and that should like nothing's happening at the moment. I'm at 50% RAM, and this is actually a pretty light scene, so I need this stuff to be sorted in order to continue the streaming while I'm developing. Anyway, so I think I'm going to sign off. I'll be back on tomorrow, all things being equal, and I will try and get on to I might try and do something with Rewired. If you can't tell, I'm ADHD, so I jump around between all sorts of things, and I think it's whatever takes my fancy. I'm sort of moving my focus onto whatever's I think is the highest priority at that time, and basically just moving on to the next chunk of work to try and de-risk it and figure out how it's going to work. Once I'm satisfied, like with that UI thing, I'm quite satisfied that world map thing is going to work now. I know it's going to be okay. I really do need to fix up that UCC, the Nolan Rider thing. I've got to get that working with RPG Builder. It is complicated. This thing is quite powerful, but with the power behind it comes all this great responsibility. No, it becomes complicated. Let's say complex rather than complicated, because I think the way that they've done it is quite clever. It is complex because there's lots of pieces in it that need to be thought about. Complicated suggests that it's bad and that they haven't done it very well, and I don't think that's the case. I think Universal Character Controller is a product that's being used by a lot of developers, so it's very popular, but it is complex to handle because of the fact you're working with first and third person. So, for example, here's the dude. So you've got two sets of objects to manage, and the rigs are separate. So you've got this first person part, and you've got the third person part up here, and you've got this. It needs the camera to be filtering and concealing the arms and the head and things like that in certain modes. And where are we? There's lots of sort of hidden stuff in this collection here. So where are we? On the main rider, you see all the stuff going on here. You can see that I've added the Malbers horse riding stuff to this guy. So he's got the ability to mount, dismount, and call them out, but he can't fire any weapons yet. The colliders are all set up so that he can actually mount the horse and dismount and navigate, those sorts of things. I've managed to get all this stuff working. In fact, let me try and run the scene that he's in, and I'll show you how the horse riding works with Universal Character Controller. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. If I can find my scene. Opsive Virtual Character Controller. It's in one of the. It's actually in an integration folder. Is it Malbers? I think I know where it might be. Opsive integration. There we go. Opsive integration. All right. So this, take it out of 2D. All right. And let's grab. All right. So there we go. So we've got Malbers Horse. I've put I've put a tree in the middle, and I've put a cube, a sphere, a capsule, and a cylinder just at north, south, east, and west. Because when you're running through this scene, and you got the scene view open and the game view open at the same time, you need to kind of tell which direction the character's moving in. So that's why I've got the two cameras set up there. So he's set there. Those boxes around the horse are the mount triggers for when the player moves into that zone and collides with this collider, then it's going to allow the character to mount if certain things are set up. I had a bit of issue trying to get those triggers to work with this character, but I'd missed something, and I got it working eventually. All right, so hopefully it still works. I only got it working the other day. And move you over. You can hear the horse. Yeah, I'm moving with the WASD keys, and I think the gamepad controls. Yeah, there we go. So the gamepad controls are working. I don't think I've got the input mapped to be able to mount the horse. Let's mute the sound because it can get really annoying very quickly. The footsteps and everything. Okay, so the mouse is moving, but you can use the gamepad at the same time. If I move into those collider zones, so let's look from above. When I move the player into those collider zones, then you see the mount UI. You can see it there. So that's the Malbers mount UI has been triggered by the player's collider colliding with the horse's mount trigger points. And once that's done, you can then do you can punch the horse, but you can actually do F mount, and he mounts the horse. And you can position the feet and whatever, and he's holding the reins in the right position now. And you can see in the scene view that let me just rotate the camera around a bit and move it down. And you can really see how this universal character controller is actually working. So this is the camera that's looking at the player, and the first person arms are attached to it. And it's following his movement. So as he moves, the camera's moving up and down. And this is the part that I've got a bit of a problem with, because as you ride the horse, you'll see in a moment. Oh, I feel sick already. So I've got to stabilize that camera, because it is, you can see it bouncing up and down. The arms are bouncing up and down, which means the camera is bouncing up and down, and it's too violent. I've just got to figure out how to slow that down a bit, and but it's working. And if I bring the camera back into view, get back to the centered line, so I'll know I'm in picture. If I press V, what's happened is it's actually hidden. If I can show you here, this is what happens in first person mode. Let me just turn off the gizmos. So it's now hidden the arms off the third person and hidden the head off the third person. The body's still there, so if I look down, I can see my legs. I can't actually see my arms holding the reins, so it's interesting because you can see that in the third person arms are actually holding the reins, but they're invisible because you're in first person mode, and it's now using layers to actually hide those arms. They're on a special layer that is being ignored by the camera. It's transparent by the camera. So it's a bit strange. And in the demo scene, the tutorial video that I saw from, I think it was either Opsive or Malbers, you couldn't see the hands holding the reins either. But they do obviously hold it in third person. So I just need to find a way to have those hands attach. But so why are they up there? You're thinking, why are they up there? Well, from the camera's perspective, when you punch, let me get off the horse. From the camera's perspective, when you punch, that's where the hands are coming out from, is pretty close to where the camera is. Take that, horse. So yeah, when you mount, if I can get back in the zone and mount the horse, everything's fine here, and I can ride the horse. And from a first person, it's actually quite good fun. From a first person mode of play, it's actually fine. The camera is not making me sick like it was before. It moves around fine. It's nice and responsive. I haven't got any weapons yet. I can look around. I can look at the horse. I can try and look inside my own body, which is a bit odd. But it's difficult to do so because of the way they've got the camera set up. And you can see in here, you can kind of figure out what it's actually doing as you look around. The camera's looking down, it's looking up. It's weird, the legs are looking a bit weird there. But that looks a bit odd. So the legs actually clipping through the horse. So there's probably some constraints and things to put on the camera. But without too much work, it was a few hours, but without a great deal of work, I've actually got a working interface between Malbers and UCC now, which allows me to do that first and third person toggle, which I probably want to do it. That's a very fast transition. I want to slow down that transition a little bit, but it works quite well. It's doing some very cool things where when it's within certain tolerances, he looks in that direction. But when you go beyond that, he just says, I'm not going to bother looking in that direction, I'll look forwards. So all that stuff's happening. And if I use the controller, so I'm now using the gamepad control, you get the same effect. I can move, I can rotate the camera with the right trigger, I can move the character with the left. It's weird seeing the arms follow. But also, in Zarktor's realm, it isn't multiplayer, so there's no way that any other player is going to see this player run around with the arms. You just don't know the arms are there. You can't see them because they're hidden with the camera, so that there's no way to see them. It's just going to become part of the transition. When you zoom in, it hides the head and it brings the camera forwards into where the head is, and you're in first person. And my understanding is that when you are in VR mode, that's basically what you're going to be working with here, is a similar sort of effect. So yeah, you can see why I'm concerned about the RPG Builder stuff working here, because I need to be able to equip stuff onto those arms or these arms. The rest of the body is probably going to be fine because it will just be a replacement for this mesh, this whatever it's called, Nolan character mesh. But yeah, no, it's kind of okay. The only problem really with this scene is when you're all over the shop. It's like, whoa. It actually feels like real horse riding when you're doing that, because I have done horse riding. You're all over the shop a lot of the time, rather than stable. But the camera, I need to control that camera. It's far too violent. Following that, I need to be able to stabilize that somehow with one of the many possible ways of doing it. They do talk about having a camera target so that when I think one of the Malbers videos where he's mounting, using the wolf as a mount, you can actually change the Malbers camera, which is, I'm not using the Malbers camera at the moment, so I'm using the Opsive camera. And this is part of the problem, is that the Opsive camera in first-person mode is following the player, and the player's bouncing up and down, so the camera's bouncing up and down. Whereas in horse riding, when you're using Malbers, this Cinemachine brain is actually it changes to a free look mount, and that has quite a stable camera position. So I need to blend these things somehow, or switch them so that when you're in first person, it's using the Opsive camera, and when you're in third person, maybe it uses the cinema brain from Malbers thing. Anyway, it's a challenge, one thing at a time. So this is a little bit of a prototyping scene, but you can see why I'm trying to get first person, because if I can nail that and get first person working, then it kind of opens up the rest of the game for playing in that style. And Opsive is basically handling all the complexity of that switching between the modes for me. But it is very complex. There's a lot of pieces in here on that player, the Nolan rider. Not all of them are actually mandatory, so I will say that a lot of these are optional, but things that are going to conflict with RPG Builder are going to be the character health, possibly attributes. The animation controls need to be blended with some of the other animation controls that I've got. Items need to be integrated with RPG Builder, because when you equip things, it's going to need to render them onto the right objects in first and third person, but do so from RPG Builder. This locomotion script is the biggest part of this, and this is where you're actually wiring up to say, how does the player move around? Do they move around in adventure mode or combat mode? Can they turn towards the camera, or do they always walk away from the camera? All that sort of stuff. What are the actions they can do? You know, there's a lot of setup here. And what the character can do is all defined here and needs to be correct for it to have any chance of working. So I'm literally keeping that as it is until when I hit an issue, I'll work through that issue. I'm not trying to pre-think, okay, here's 100 things that the character can do. What I certainly do want to do is I want to get the Malbers aim and weapon management back in, so that you can fire arrows while mounted or fire arrows from the ground. This Universal Character controller does have guns and a bow somewhere in here. There is a bow somewhere. But anyway, yeah, so you can actually fire a bow with this character, but it's a different mechanic to the Malbers bow. So I need to figure out which wins, or whether I blend the two somehow. So there's quite a few things to figure out there, but I think it's worth it in order to get first person and third person and potentially VR into the game. If this all falls flat in a heap, and it just becomes too hard, then I will probably work with Malbers and Invector. But I'm certainly giving this a good go to see if I can get this working with Universal Character Controller. So yeah, it's been a busy few weeks to get all this stuff rolling and get it starting to take some shape with first person mode. It's quite interesting to sort of walk through these scenes that you've built for third person, and you actually put the first person into it. You spot things that you didn't see before. So anyway, taking up a lot more time. So I will be back hopefully tomorrow at 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time to continue on. I will probably might do some work in the afternoon tomorrow to actually see if I can get Rewired. Rewired's installed. It's just not wired up to anything at the moment. The demo scenes are in here, but I haven't done anything to integrate it with these other pieces yet. But I know that they support the integration, so I'm pretty sure that I can get Rewired to work with this scene. and allow it to then you customize it through Rewired so that the actions are all getting piped through this one piece. Yeah, I think it's probably what I want to do tomorrow, and report back and see how it goes by the time we stream in the evening. So I think I'm going to call it a night. And thank you for joining. The video from this stream will be up on YouTube hopefully over the next couple of days. So if you need to refer back to it, or you want to sort of look at either some of the assets that's talked about or the design, the technical architecture stack, you can feel free to borrow my thoughts on it. Obviously, I'm interested in having you look into Zarktor's Realm on Steam. I'm about to engage some further artwork on the Zarktor's Realm Steam page. The Steam page will get revamped with new artwork and new logo. The current Zarktor's Realm logo is something I did about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's quite hard to read on the Steam capsules. Very small. I'm aware of that, and so it's going to be revamped in the coming months. So the Steam page will start to look a bit different, and probably the trailer video will actually be revamped as well. But first of all, we're just going to start with the Steam page. So that's going to be happening. So there's an awful lot of stuff happening in the background at the moment, and not least of which is the storyline, the characters, the locations. As you can see, my list of locations here is growing. I'm not going to quickly show them all, but there's quite a few things here where I'm going to be building out these tutorial levels as mini levels in Gaia, and starting to make them navigatable in the map. So you'll start to see the game world expand pretty rapidly from these scenes that are there. I think some of them are very generic there, like wilderness, farmland. So I'm happy to show you these here because there's nothing too cluey about what's going on there. I just don't want to give away too much in the game by showing some of the other specific scenes that have game story tied into them. So yeah, it's starting to take shape. I'm really pleased with it, and very excited to be working on this at the moment. And I've got 2 other team members that working with me. Harrison is my son, and Aidan is his friend, who's the artist, who's designing the bosses and designing the boss levels, the level maps, so that I can implement them in Unity. And Aidan is a very, very talented artist, and comes up with some crazy stuff that just blows your mind. So the bosses in the game are going to be pretty horrendous to look at. They're going to be horrific. I think we're talking demons here, so they're going to be pretty nasty looking. Yeah, a lot of the other characters are, a lot of the other enemies are now taking shape. The demons, they are a whole raft of them starting to take shape. And these are not the bosses. These are the mobs that are basically going to be in the game. The bosses are custom, but they will be supported by a lot of these enemy NPCs who will be causing all sorts of trouble for the player. And as you can see, it's a lot of demons and monsters and skeletons. That's kind of what I enjoy playing with role-playing games, is walking into a room and having the room spawn with hundreds of skeletons and then chopping away through them and trying to get the treasure. So that sort of gameplay is what I'm aiming for. All right, so I'm going to call it a night, and I will be back online tomorrow. Check us out on YouTube, Zarktor Studios on YouTube, and give us a like. And yeah, if you can follow Zarktor's Realm and put it on your wish list on Steam, that'd be great. And look forward to seeing you on the next stream. Thank you very much.